And we're now into the feedback session, yeah? All right. So this next session is an informal introduction to trying to just capture some of the ideas and the thinking. However, let me just say a couple of points of context. Within the members only section, we will be posting for your review any of the slide decks that have been presented, either the ones that are about to come later this morning, or the excellent presentations that we had in the Madrid Food Bank. Seems a long time ago now, 2 days ago, or Tom's excellent slides and the challenges that he gave us. So they will be available. The members of the FEBA team who were in each of the breakout sessions have been taking notes of the sessions, and we will produce a more structured narrative of the recommendations and the ideas. So the session we're going to have now is not the end of all of the ideas or the feedback, because I think there are lots and lots of very specific, individual, tangible actions and ideas that have been made, as well as some big strategic ones. Those of you who have written a challenge or an opportunity for FEBA and come and put it on the table here, on the stage here, I will be collating all of those into a report for the board of directors of FEBA. They will review all of that, make some thoughts and considerations, and then once we've got their feedback, a paper will be produced for the membership to let you know what will be done, or in some instances what might not be able to be done. Some of you have got some quite nice challenges for FEBA. Some of them have got some quite big challenges for FEBA. If during this session more ideas occur to you, please write them down. Somebody's phone's going, so it's a drink at lunchtime. Who was that? Alison, I owe you a drink. You owe me a drink. But the so if you have further ideas, please sort of come and put them up here. Okay. So I'm going to ask Bernard, if I may. I'm going to start with you. I'm going to ask the facilitators of the session to just come up and to be prepared to just very briefly remind people what the session was, and then we're not going to go through. And we had this conversation, and then that conversation, and et cetera, et cetera. So but it's more looking at what are some of the themes and what are some of the tangible sort of outcomes that come from that. Bernard, thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay, for the introduction. So the working group I was in charge was from farm to food banks. How do we maximize the opportunity from the area of greatest waste and potential? I'm going to summarize all the ideas and not to give all the different examples developed by the members of the groups, of the two groups. First of all, I would like just to say that is it a good idea to implement direct relationships with the farmers? Definitively, according to testimonies, it is a good idea, but with a lot of difficulties. The number of farmers is the first difficulty. How to be in contact with them, and how to implement a restricted list of goods coming directly from the farms. It is mainly fresh fruits and vegetables. So we have a difficulty because it is a restricted list. If we want to extend this list, we need to develop relationships, and we had a lot of testimonies with that, with cooperatives, association of farmers, farmers union, who process, or chamber of agriculture, who process the raw material. And we had example with flour, dairy products, meat, or fruits and vegetable condition. We share in the group different experience of direct collection of goods, of surplus, from individual farms. Opportunity for a second harvest, farmers making available part of their farm, their ground, just to be cropped directly and to be collected and harvested by the food banks. Another idea is to be present in the gross market, and we had example of volunteers going to the farm markets, the gross market, just to be directly in connection with the farmers and just to collect part of the surplus. Those examples show that you need to invest a lot, and in general, with a lot of efforts, but with a reduced performance according to the tonnage we can collect by that way. So I think that the main question is about logistics, because it is a critical point. Food banks, in cooperation with farmers, have to be involved in conditioning and packaging the product, and transportation as well. So it is one of the difficulties, and not so many food banks are equipped just to face that difficulty, just to condition or package the different products. It can be done also, and we had an example with a processing workshop in a win-win relationship with the farmer, when the farmer are just providing the product and getting the processed product, and at the same time, part of those are just collected by the food banks. To be more efficient, what are the leverage actions suggested by the food banks members? First of all, to get partnerships with farmers, because of the number, we can go through retailers. And with the retailers, we can just get the list of the suppliers to be directly in contact with farmers. And it means that it is a necessary traceability of the product, just to give the information to the farmers that their products are going to the food banks. The other idea is just to go through Chamber of Agriculture, Association, Farmers Union, for example, and the other point is with volunteers to be present in farm markets for local supply. The last point would be on surplus. How being aware of, in real time, of opportunity of collecting surplus of food products, and it means that you need to be with the monitoring instruments just to know exactly in real time what are the surplus of products on the market just to be collected by food banks. It is a win-win relationship, because when you collect surplus, you avoid market prices drop, and at the same time, it helps the farmers, and at the same time, we collect the surplus. So it needs that you are available in your country, market monitoring when existing, because it is not the task of the food bank just to monitor the agricultural market and the farm markets. So in few words, farm to food banks is a real opportunity to reduce food loss and waste, but it needs a specific dedication to get efficient solution for the food banks. Thank you.
So I think the challenge there is, so what do we do next? And it seems to be a very clear call as well that we need to do further work in terms of pulling together those countries that have learned experience and making sure that we can capture that learned experience and make sure that that is shared. I think this is going to be a large and major long-term piece of work. Interesting, already the relationship with Tetra Pak is challenging us in interesting ways, which is a link and a segue onto the manufacturing and the packaging side. Because the view there is that actually organizations like Tetra Pak understand the raw material market in a way that we possibly don't, and understand what are the price dynamics and the access issues and points. So I think working in partnership with the next part of the chain, which is looking at the sort of manufacturing side, and that's a link into asking, we're now going to look at manufacturing and partnering creatively to deliver surplus. And Karina is going to come up. Where? She's not here? Okay. We'll do the next one. You understand the logic of why we were going to do that next, but we'll do it in a different order. Let's go further down and to the collaboration with retailers. This was from the board. Jochen Bruhl was asked to facilitate this, but I haven't actually thanked you yet, Marco. But Marco Kopp very kindly supported Jochen in terms of being able to do this in English. Although Jochen's English is much better than he thinks it is. Come on up. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. First of all, thank you to all the participants for your active participation and the insights you shared with us. We talked about the current landscape on collaboration with the retail sector, what challenges it brings, and what solutions we came up with. We're going to send you everything with the documentation, but some key insights are that we already collaborate with huge retail chains and wholesales, and there's still a lot of food to rescue out there. And the challenges are competition, the lack of diversity and quality in food, different tax incentives or non-supportive laws. And we know how important it is to inform all our stakeholders about our work and how we do it, and to open our network for each other, basically. But it's also important to have good long-term relations and a professional, trustworthy, well-known brand. Some key factors we came up with was a written exclusive agreement with supermarkets with our quality standards, a well-running software and a supportive law, and we discussed about several ideas that are already working in some countries, like conserve large donations to make them usable later, charge the retail for the waste they're producing with us, promote tax reduction, agree on food bank first with competitors, and some more. And we came up with 3 wishes for FEBA. First, please give us an overview over the retail agreements in the different countries, if possible. Second, if possible, please give us an overview over the different tax reductions for food donations in the different countries. And third, a workshop would be highly appreciated about these different tax reductions, how it works, what to do, how to do it, and to bring the different countries together in this topic. So far, so good. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. It's absolutely perfect in terms of length. And some really, really, really positive, clear, precise sort of actions for going forward. Okay, let's go back and have a look at manufacturing. And Karina, thank you very much for coming up, and thank you for facilitating this session.
Okay, hello. After our session about the piloting creatively to deliver surplus food while giving value to our donors, we have a few points and solution. First, the most important value for our donors is a brand, variability, promotion, responsibility, employees, respect, it means esteems, and of course money. What we can do for our donors to be in a good collaboration, it means that we can lobbying anti-waste law for the first. Second, lobbying the tax deduction for our donors. It means they have a zero tax for donors. Promote good project for the environment. Together we can do something for our environment, for local people. The next, we have a project with the transport company. For example, in Poland, we have a project with Raben, and it's 600 pallets for free, and they transport us these pallets. It's, for example, the next one is invite employers of our manufacturers for volunteering. We can use the culinary workshop, for example. And the next, we can take a workshop for employers inside the manufacturers, and we can know each other. It will be good relationship, of course. And we have something for environment. For the example, we can, I don't know, collect in a manufacturer's paper and change for the donors for to the food. And next we have promote action. It means that films, movies, for example, in the social media, and show how we cooperate with manufacturers. We can show how we do it in food banks, and promote local cooperation with our manufacturers, with food bank, and our partners from local government or schools, and etc. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next session was looking at all aspects of extending life of products, including processing, freezing, and so much more, and what can we learn from across the FEBA membership. In addition to acting as the host for the last couple of days, Pedro, you've kindly facilitated this session, so thank you.
Well, as Lindsay said, it was a workshop trying how could we extend shelf life of our products. First, I've got to give you an important news, and it's nobody's been able so far to multiply fish and bread. It was done once, but no later. So I would say that most countries are doing in small pieces of the same things. There are slight differences from one country to another. So I think it was very interesting to see what all other countries were doing, although I'm not going to discover any special thing. Nevertheless, we heard the way that, for example, in Spain, we made juices in a certain moment where we had a lot of fruits, and we paid the transformer with product, which I don't know is that usual. We've heard like, well, at UK, they do everything. They freeze food, they put food on cans, they do all sorts of things to extend life. There are many countries which transform the product. They've got kitchen in different ways. And in France, they are doing with atelier in different places with some success, well, with a lot of success in some of them. Then we go to another countries which are freezing meat. Like the case of Belgium, where they freeze meat so they can prolong the life of products. Then we went a little bit out, but what other things we could do, and we were talking about how, for example, in Italy, they are recovering cut-offs of the meat industry, or some, and they use it to create some salami or whatever. Then, then there were some common problems. For example, when you get tomatoes, you get too many tomatoes. So you want to extend the life of them, but a way to do it is to go to the industry and transform it in soup or wherever. But the problem is that at this moment, factories are completely full. So if you got many tomatoes, the factories also got many tomatoes. So there is one country, which is Austria. What are they doing? They are freezing the tomatoes. So after the campaign, they can go with that product and make soups or wherever in a moment where factories are not that busy. So a lot of small or big things are done all around different countries. So what could we do to use that knowledge? Let's say one thing that was suggested was that FEBA could organize the collect of all these examples and circulate. In the same line that some sessions of workshops, just placing in common what has been done, could be organized. Another thing which is important is that the regulation. We discovered that in some countries they said, no, this can't be done because the European regulation forbids it. And then we discovered that in 3 other countries of Europe, it's been done. So something that is in theory forbidden because European regulations forbid it, and then it seems that it's not that. So in these cases, again, I think that to know what's going on could be very good from one country to another one. So basically, two calls for action. One of them was collect these examples, and it's not a FEBA problem. It's a problem of all of us sending the information. And the other one is, if there is some problem or some way of work which seems interesting, FEBA could organize workshops on that theme. Maybe visit to a country which is with a better performance in that line. And that's basically about all. Thank you very much.
And the last of the repeat sessions before we go into a bit of more of a conversation and a dialogue, and then we'll go into the afternoon working, the evening working sessions, is looking at new opportunities for food donation that are not covered by the other areas. A board member, Marco from Italy, was facilitating this, but was supported by Valentina. And Valentina is going to come up and summarize Marco's feedback. Thank you.
Good morning. So So the session focus on, so we focus our attention on innovation. And Marco asked to the participants of both sessions 3 questions to reply to 3 main questions. So, which are the tools of the food banks for knowing the food market trends? Does the food bank resources for knowing and analyzing the trends? And if so, who's doing it? And does the food bank invest in resources for knowing the trends? So the participants had to respond to these 3 questions, and it was really interesting to understand what they are doing in terms of innovation. Some, of course, all the outcomes were really interesting, but then some of them are really innovative. So, for instance, we had some example from Belgium that they are researching on the social return on investment. So Jeff Motar was sharing the experience of Belgium with us. Or the emergency network that was created in Portugal during COVID, but then is still ongoing. And thanks, Hannah, for sharing this beautiful opportunity. I'm also mentioning would suggest these activities, so maybe you can just go to them and then ask more information from the direct participants that share this information with us. An interesting research of University of Milan from Italy. Today they are not here because our flight was cancelled. And they prepared the work for the new law in Moldova from Oleg, the program for collecting data in Ukraine from Andriy and Dimitro, and investing on pilot projects in Ireland, thanks to Karen. Or the academy in Germany, where they are organizing workshop for training the volunteers and training all the TAFL across the network. So you can see there are some responses that were current, such as the analysis of the data, the dialogue with the assisted charities. So an important point that all the information are usually gathered from the charitable organization that the food banks are assisting. Sometimes the research with the external entities such as university or expert on that specific field, and we also had a suggestion in this regard from Sweden, who participated and explained us that usually when they ask they want to know about some specific innovation, they ask to expert. And also the dialogue with the most relevant food players. So sometimes the feedback was, okay, we are not so innovative because we are facing with the daily challenges, but then when we want to know something more, we are asking to the network for the food players because we usually deal with all of them. So those are the recurrent ideas that came out during the 2 sessions. And in addition, as regards so they are more about looking externally what's going on and how we can innovate and taking inspiration from the external, but also from the internal. This is a suggestion that also Tom from the Netherlands gave to us, in which he was explaining that the governance usually is really democratic and is taking the decision across the country. So it was a really powerful insight. So as regards innovation, as a conclusion, I mean, there's a lot of room to do, but the food banks, at least the food banks that participated in this session, were really active in showing how they are monitoring the situation, how they are dealing with the internal and external stakeholders, and how they are an active player in the food system in their country. So thank you again for all the feedback. It was really useful to understand something more from you. And then, of course, you can ask more information on the direct participants if you want to know about their project. That for sure, maybe some of them could be replicated in your own country.
So there's a commonality in all of those in terms of basically saying there's lots of stuff happening in different places, and we need to understand more about that. So rather than just in a conversation in a session, but to have it properly written up so that it can be properly understood and interpreted for a different country and a different culture and a different agricultural or food system environment. I think we've got a challenge. and that challenge is this, is that it's really easy for us to sit together for 2 days like this, to come up with, there's lots and lots of things happening elsewhere, and the challenge is, how do you make, when you go back to your inboxes and your day jobs on Monday morning, how do you prioritize driving some of these initiatives forward? And how does FEBA, which is a small organization, how does FEBA proactively support that? Now, for 13 years, my role was on the other side of the fence. I was with you. I would go back. I would have all of the best intentions. But the biggest problem that I had that just pulled me down was time. So we will look within FEBA at how we properly respond to convening, collating, capturing, and communicating. That was quite good, wasn't it? That was off the top of my head. The detail of what happens country by country or in its subject area. But there is a phrase in English called rubbish in, rubbish out. Because if we do not all participate with our knowledge, and I will hold my hand up, the UK has not been very good at doing that because it's been time pressured. And for me to then go to, for example, a project manager who is dealing on the processing side and say, you've never heard of FEBA, but this is what it is, and you need to participate in that workshop and that group, they're not prioritizing it. One of the things I'm very impressed, one of the many things I'm very impressed about our hosts, FESVAL, is that Pedro, your job title, is those external relationships, those external managing. And we almost need to be in a place where we need to work differently. We need to have somebody who is going to carry the torch for making sure that as much of the knowledge is captured centrally and then is available to each of our own countries. This takes us back to some of the challenges of yesterday of if we're going to be serious about using all of these different strands to try and tackle that gap between the increased demand and the amount of food that is available, then we need to behave and demonstrate and work differently. We need to learn from each other much more efficiently and effectively. And I just want to spend 5 minutes now of throwing that challenge out and seeing whether there are any thoughts or ideas as to how we do things differently. And those challenges can be at FEBA, but I think they need to be on us as national federations as well. How do we make this behaviour change? Anybody want to kick off? No? Bernard, do you want? Can we have the mic? Yeah, sorry, I didn't warn you. The microphones were going to be needed.
A suggestion? We can follow a process of quality certification, I would say. We have to write what we're doing. And I think we don't get, because we had exchange, but informal exchanges. And I think that if we are just writing what we are doing, what are our different models of collecting, and we can exchange information between the different food banks nationally. So I think that we have to think about a kind of quality certification on FEBA and to be developed by the members. I think it would be an improvement, I would say, of exchange of information, because when you write something, it is on the paper and you can just exchange information formally. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody want to build on that? Okay, I do silences quite well. I'm just going to stand here. Come on, I want contribution, please, from the room. This is important stuff. Tom.
But only to please you. I think we must realize, because Bernard says something about quality certification. For food safety we do that, of course, but certification also means a kind of professionalism, and we need that, but on the other hand we have to realize that we work with a lot of volunteers. And one thing I know is that the volunteers, they want to do their job, but they don't want to do administration, they don't want to write things down. So, and especially in the Netherlands, because we have 100% volunteers, then I think that I got a lot of opposition to do those kind of things. On the other hand, everyone says we must be professionalized more and more. But I think we have to find that we don't copy those systems from commercial organizations, but that we find our own way, that we can involve the volunteers and that they understand and that they gladly do it. So I believe if we are going that way, we have to do it to make our own system fitting into our volunteers organization.
Okay, so let's build on that, because that's really, really helpful, and I was hoping that's what you were going to say, because we use volunteers in a range of different ways. There's a fantastic role here for somebody to say, what we need is a volunteer who has a really strategic mind, a broad career of knowledge and experience, and is prepared to play the role of acting as the window for a country in contributing with others. Because the benefit of that is going to be that volunteer is going to help shape some really, really useful knowledge and information to be able to come back. Because it's, the devil in this is in the detail. You know, let's take the processing, you know, the point, and the work that the United Kingdom has done on taking farm produce and trying to extend the life of it by putting it into preserved containers. The initial trial was on tins. What did that cost? What was the input cost of that? How much? No, how did you approach it from a project management perspective? You know, where was what level of expertise was needed? These are all of the things that I, in another country, would want to be able to know and understand, to be able to take that concept and not repeat the mistakes, but to build on those and also adapt them for my own national circumstances. So time and the opportunity cost is a big pressure, but possibly what we need to do is create a very clear strategic volunteer role and ask national associations to go and try and find somebody who's could be a paid member of staff or is somebody who says, you know what, intellectually, that is where I can see I can add real value to my volunteering in my national food bank by acting as that international. Now, is that a stupid idea? Is that workable? Brian.
I think it's a great idea, and I think one thing that's been very successful was the inclusion of more participants from smaller food banks in this format, and I think including, because that enables the food banks to also maybe include people with different areas of expertise from different levels of their organization. I think that was a very good step to promote what we were just speaking about. So yeah, that was more just confirmation that I think this format was very good this time.
Okay. So you've raised the issue there also of the different sizes, but also possibly the different maturity of different food banks. One of the pieces of feedback that I've heard is much of the examples that are being given are what big examples that have been developed and are being done by the bigger countries with a longer history of food banking. And it's difficult to translate it into my country, where we are only 5 years in and there are 2 of us, or whatever. We've done work before on specifically workshopping and looking at supporting emerging food banks, but one of the areas of feedback, and I don't even want to get into a sort of discussion now, but because Ryan raised it, I would like to hear back from some of the younger, less developed food banks as to whether the content of these days needs to be adapted or adjusted, perhaps as a parallel stream, but that would be, so that's an additional point. Okay, so one of the practical things that we will explore and look at is there a role that we can try and identify, and it doesn't matter whether it's a paid member of staff, an old volunteer or a new volunteer, that can have somebody who is a point of contact, but also has the mandate within their national association and their network of food banks to go and extract the information in the way that Bernard was saying in his first comment, in order to make sure that that is written down. And I think there is a challenge for FEBA as to what central capacity do we need to coordinate that. So Ethan, and then Balash, and then Tom. See, I knew you'd get talking eventually.
Just, I suppose, the most interesting thing about coming to the conference is learning about all the different initiatives, and you just get a slice of what's happening, and it's very inspiring. Would there be a way, or has this been done before, where within FEBA there's a portal where you have an overview of all the food banks, maybe staff numbers, volunteers numbers, and the key topics that were here today, like what's the story with policy, feed, but a quick snapshot, any projects in relation to transformation, any projects in relation to farm, and every organisation has a profile and a point of contact, or even within the organisations, like who's leading on the retail, who's leading on the transformation, because what we have really benefited from is, some of our team went to Lithuania to see their processing facilities, but you then don't have it all in one person, or you can delegate it out so that whoever's leading on feed in the different organisations can reach out individually. Likewise with the policy. So even if there was on the FEBA website or something, just a profile of the organisations that we have to update annually to say there's new projects going on, or there's new policy updates here, because it would give you a snapshot of what's going on, and it would give you relevancy to, okay, we really have a problem with our farm level, so who's doing what in Europe, and can we gather that? And it would take the pressure off FEBA to constantly have to keep an eye on what's going on. So just a suggestion.
And it's a great suggestion. I haven't discussed this with the executive team at FEBA, but I can almost don't need to, but I can guarantee you that one of the biggest frustrations is getting information back. And that's the thing that is going to facilitate better learning for all of us. And that's the sort of, for me, that's the big behaviour change that needs to come out of these 2 days. Balázs.
Thanks. So you're touching my favorite subject, knowledge management. I put 2 pages of comments yesterday, and all are in relation to share knowledge within the network. And just 2 comments I would like to make. One is, I think FEBA should create a knowledge management strategy, and I'm on board on working on this.
Balázs is on the board.
And secondly, I fully agree that we would need a network of people from all the countries, but I wouldn't say we need very bright-minded people understanding everything from communication to IT. I think we rather need kind of gatekeepers who help finding the communication or finding the right people, finding the right knowledge in the organization, or sending. So it's a 2-way information flow. And I think proper English is a must here, because I think we very often face language problems. So if we would have a team of people speaking good English, and not the top managers, because the top managers are often too busy to deal with these issues, people who can help getting the information and sharing the information, I think this would be a big step forward.
Thank you very much. Tom, and then I'm going to pull a few things together and talk about the feedback from the 4 standalone sessions that we had.
Yes, I was triggered when you said capacity. So just an idea, we are making use of a lot of consultancy firms who work for nothing for the food bank, because they have all kinds of foundations that they can spend and doing things for NGOs. So we got every year thousands of hours of those companies, and they can facilitate you. We have used them for strategic goals, we have used them for projects, we have used them for smaller things. So maybe we can, for the bigger companies like PwC, Deloitte, that we can ask them to do such kinds of projects on European level.
Okay. So I'm going to labour this point again. This is, for me, this is the key structural change that we need to make. We need to look at each other and talk to each other in the coffee break about how we're not just going to go away from this with our heads full of great ideas that have all dissolved by the time we get off the trains or the aeroplanes. But we are going to use this as the beginning of a piece of proper intelligence sharing in exactly as Balázs has said, and I've seen the 2 full pages of comments that he's given as a challenge to FEBA. There were 4 sessions that took place yesterday from 4:30 to 6 that looked at commercial competition, the social return on investment and social impact, the policy and legislative opportunities, and although those will get tackled, those will get touched on slightly by Lisa later on, and the opportunities and challenges around buying food. We haven't got the time to ask the presenters the facilitators of those to come and just share those headline points, but you will get the same comprehensive set of notes from those sessions in due course, with all of the other feedback from the fuller notes from the earlier ones. And the reason for that is because we are tight in time, And if I go over on time, I create the biggest risk to any conference like this, which is I stop you having a coffee. Now, you don't know this yet. We have rejigged the program for today so that there is a coffee break, and it is going to be now. So we have 15 minutes. Please use that as a coffee break and a comfort break. I know that some people need to leave when we finish at 1 very promptly, so out of respect for those individuals, we're going to be quite strict about the timing, so please be back at 1:15, which gives you slightly over 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
Hello. Please take your seat. You can still drink your coffee or tea. Please. Please. Por favor. Gracias. So, welcome back from the coffee break. And now this is the final rush. So, we know that there are some topics that are becoming more and more important and relevant also for the food banks. And some of these topics were also mentioned yesterday in different working sessions. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Balázs Csek, who will address the topic of carbon credits. What are carbon credits and how can we work with carbon credits? Can carbon credits work for food banks? So thank you, Balázs, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. This is my first ever presentation on carbon credits. I have to disclose I'm not an expert, so we won't have a Q&A session, and we are leaving to the airport 1:45 so that you don't embarrass me with any questions I can't answer. But I will share you my learnings from the past few months where we were dealing with the carbon credits, and I was trying to summarize this. Push. So we spoke about it yesterday as well, that we have a double mission. We have a social mission and we have an environmental mission as well. And as I see, the environmental mission is getting more and more important. The global need for sustainability is increasing. You see the SDGs, the EU Green Deal, ESG, I will speak about some of them later. And we use sometimes to communicate the impact, the environmental impact, but we usually just use rough estimations. It's, I mean, in Hungary, for example, we use 2.5 kilogram carbon dioxide footprint for 1 kilogram food because it's coming from an FAO material. I was reading Ireland was using 3.2, so we just a very rough average, which is I think it's not enough, and we need to do more. There is a carbon footprint working group in FEBA. We started it a year ago. That was announced, and we started to work early this year. And the goal was understanding who is doing what, so we realized that several countries are already thinking about it, trying to find out what could or should we do together, and a little bit understanding the landscapes and finding out what what should be the next steps. So how can we measure the impact, communication, what companies require, and we heard about the voluntary carbon market, and we were thinking whether or not there are opportunities for food banks in this. And so overall, dig one level deeper. Why is it important? Communication purposes, also externally, for increasing the brand reputation, and I think also internally, more and more people, especially young people, are interested in the environmental issues. So if we show them what's the impact we make, also as we show them what's the impact we make on the social side, that helps. So it's kind of an employer branding or volunteer employer branding issue as well, to show it internally. And also, if we understand better, it might create new actions. So it might divert some of our focuses. So we might say, for example, chocolate, we don't like so much from the social perspective. Chocolate, we like very much from the environmental perspective, because it has a higher footprint. It will be, I think, important for our donors, for the companies, and we have to serve their PR, CSR, ESG, CSRD needs. And potentially we can also monetize, so it can be a tool for us to get more funding for our activities. Also directly and also indirectly via this so-called voluntary carbon market. First I will speak about this. What is this voluntary carbon market? The VCM gives companies, non-profit organizations, governments, and also individuals the opportunity to buy and sell carbon offset credits. So companies who are unable to reach their emission targets can buy credits on the market, and by buying credits, investing in projects, which projects are offsetting those. So an example, when you buy your flight ticket, for example, often you have a chance to pay a few euros more to offset your carbon emission, and then the company is using this money to buy something on the market, so spend this money on projects that are doing something which are reducing carbon dioxide. So let's say there is an organization who is planting millions of trees in South America, and then this organization is collecting money via this market, and then the companies can buy the activities of this organization, and thereby they can offset their credits. There is a quite complicated process for it. We did consult with companies who do this. There are different kind of actors in it. So the green one is there are several standard agencies or organizations. These are non-profit organizations who create methodologies, and the projects have to be applied to these methodologies. There are consultants, and consultants are often the brokers as well. So the consultants help the project owners to prepare the project. So first they do a feasibility assessment, and then design the project, document the project, so prepare the project to be validated. Then there are auditors. So the auditors audit the project across the methodology, and they say whether or not this fits to the methodology. If it is validated, then it's registered on the market, and usually the same company is trying to sell then the credits of this organization on the market. So there is then a regular circle that you do things, you create credits, you sell on the market, and it's then ongoing. And then, when you sell and finish, it gets retired. So that's the whole cycle. And you see their timings as well. So it takes years from the idea to get to the point when you're selling something on the market. The first thing is to have a methodology on food saving, which actually happened this year. So one of the agencies who does that is called the Verified Carbon Standard, VERA, and VERA has issued a final methodology this July, which is called Methodology for Reducing Food Loss and Food Waste. You can find the methodology, you can read it. I'm highlighting two of the main limitations, which are the biggest problem for us. There are two main limitations of this methodology. The first one is the methodology only accepts additional activities. So whatever you are already doing doesn't count. It only accepts activities which are additional to what you have been doing in the past. This is one limitation. And the second is even more important, that the current methodology only takes into consideration the offset starting from the point where you take over the food from the companies. So it doesn't count the total life cycle, just the end, which is a tiny part of the total carbon footprint part. So by understanding this and looking at a pre-assessment of this, our opinion is that, first of all, this certification is costly. And if we do, when we were just very briefly trying to find out if we have a cost-benefit analysis, it seems to be currently that it will be negative. So we'll need to put in more money than the money we can get out of it. This may change if the methodology changes and they would include the first part in it, or the market pricing will be increased, which is, by the way, expected to happen in the future. So for now, our advice is, first of all, follow what's happening, but please do not sign exclusive agreements with consultants, brokers, because some of them might be contacted by companies saying that sign an agreement with us and then we do everything for you and then you will get some money, you don't need to pay anything. Be very careful, because you might end up in 3 years saying, oh, we made a mistake. So be very careful, let's talk to each other and probably don't sign an agreement at this moment. And we think that we should, in the short term, more focus kind of with what I call the soft market, which is mostly driven by ESG and CSRD. And now I will go to the glossary of terms. Probably most of you have heard about the SDGs. Who has heard about the SDGs? Yeah. This is, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. 12.3 is ours. We are, as we heard, the study in Belgium showed that we have impact on another 8. That's something general. ESG it means environmental, social governance. That's coming more from the investment world, from the finance world. Sometimes they call it also green finances. This is something voluntary and it's non-standard. Who has heard about CSRD? So this is getting very important, I think, for us, because that's a European directive, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. It's already in force, and it will be obligatory. It will be standardized, and it impacts 50,000 companies in Europe. So all big companies and many of the SMEs will have to report on a yearly basis. And there is also a standard, which is called ESRS, the European Sustainability Reporting Standard, that was, I think, also accepted just now in July. And this writes down the reporting methodology of it. And the big ones will start reporting in 2025 based on 2024 data, which is next year. And the rest will start reporting it out 2026 and 27. So now we are at a phase where all the big companies are probably already thinking of how they will do this reporting, and we can help them filling their report sheets if we know how to do it. Measuring and reporting, I mean, in general, is not easy. I mean, calculating the footprint is very complex. There is something called a life cycle assessment, but it depends on many aspects. So I mean, even if you speak about a tomato, it's not the same tomato if it comes next door with a different packaging, with a different technology, or it comes from Spain with another packaging, other technology, etc. So even on the product level, it may be different. And we have very little data. We usually no information on product history. We see tomatoes, but we don't know where these tomatoes are coming from. We often even don't have an itemized product list. Sometimes we just get mixed bakery or mixed fruit and vegetables. So it might be tomatoes or cucumbers or carrots or whatsoever. And on national level, and especially in European level, we have only aggregated data by product categories. So that makes this kind of measurement very difficult. So something we are aiming is to find some kind of a way of a calculation method, which is, first of all, taking into consideration the total life cycle, so farm to fork, which is not the same as the Vera methodology does, using the data we already have, and somehow we should match it with some kind of existing database, which are different databases available on the market, and somehow create kind of a compromise on which deepness we go down. We should probably not go down to product level, but to find a way which is better than the one we use now, and it's acceptable for the corporates, for their reporting standards. And this is the compromise we should find, and then create a model that we should make available for all the food banks so that they can calculate their footprint on an accurate way. There's one example. Food Cloud in Ireland are just today officially publishing, if I understood well, not me, they're doing it in Dublin today, the Food Cloud Carbon Calculator, which was created by a consulting company, Clearstream Solutions. And the data comes from WRAP, which is an English organization, Waste Resource Action Program. And the scope, it is calculated, so they calculate the carbon dioxide footprint, the transport-related emission, and also the end-of-life disposal method. So, I mean, you know the pyramid, and from which level the food is being saved. They also have a way that they calculate the footprint they are saving, and they deduct the footprint they make, because Food Cloud has also transportation, and then they have the overall impact what Food Cloud has. And the calculator has the ability to extend to other metrics like land use, water use, cost, and other things. We were trying to look at what this database could be, what we can use. And the criteria we set was, first of all, it should be specialized for food, because we're dealing with food. So it has to have many food items. It has to be something maintained. It means there are a lot of international research projects who do calculate RCA data, but then the project finishes and then nobody cares about the data. So it should be something that is regularly updated. It should be European. So, I mean, of course, we will not find data which is exactly the same for Hungary, UK, France, whatever, but at least to be something European, not South American, because things are somehow similar. So that's, this is all hypothesis and simplification of the project, and possibly free or not very expensive. So after consulting with people who understand better this world than me, the solution we see now is a database called Relive, which is a French database. It has 2,500 food items in 11 categories and 61 subcategories. It's regularly maintained and updated. It's a bit French, but still, it's European, and it's free, so we don't even have to pay for it. And by talking to Adi in Food Cloud and to RAP, it turned out that the database that Clearstream solution was using for the Food Cloud calculator is also based primarily on Relive. So it shows to the same direction that Relive seems to be the right solution for having the database. We have done a little game in Hungary as well, without a consultant, just us, with the help of a volunteer, that we did a calculation. We made a sampling. We used 7 months of our central warehouse data. We took 1 month of direct delivery, so the stores, and we did a matching. So we categorized all these products, and we selected the subcategories, so the 61 subcategories which are available in Relive, and then we matched them, and then we get a ratio of our products compared to the Relive subcategories. And I mean, our hypothesis is that this ratio doesn't change in the short term. So of course, sometimes you get a bit more fruit and vegetables, sometimes a bit more bakery, but in the short term, it doesn't significantly change. So we say sampling has to be done regularly, let's say yearly, and we guess that's enough. That is what an auditor should verify. We're saying that, but it would be better that someone else says, yes, I accept it. And then another simplification, that within these subcategories there are a lot of food items, so we simply used the average, because of course there are many meat items, many vegetable items, but in general we said we used the average footprint of these subcategories. And then we made an analysis, and it shows for the Hungarian Food Bank, in the first 7 months, we distributed 5,600 tons of food, and we calculated the footprint, and it looks like that. It's 8,700 tons. And if you look at, so you see, for example, that vegetables in the volumes is 35%, in the footprint is 25%. Alcohol-free drinks is 2%, but in the emission is 4%. Or chocolate is just 1%, but in the footprint is 5%. So the ratio is changing, and it's interesting. I know the Food Cloud, in Food Cloud, there is a higher average. That's probably because they have more meats or more soft drinks that we do. We have in majority, as you saw, vegetables and bread and pastry, which doesn't have a very high carbon footprint. So overall, for us, it's a 1.5 in general. So that may vary country by country, but I think this is a more accurate way of showing. If I was an auditor, I would accept it. What are the next steps? First of all, I think we should understand and assess what our corporate partners need, and especially in terms of this European sustainability reporting standard, what the standard needs and what they need, and in what format and what audit and what level do they require us to be happy. And then we should, I think, validate, modify, finish, publish a calculation method which we could give as as a tool for all the food banks. It might need changes in food bank data collection. Just give you an example. In Agribalize, the canned beans are in the same category as the raw beans. In our categorization, this is food and vegetable and canned products. So there might be a mismatch in our categories. It would be good if our categories could be a one-on-one match. It would make the measurement easier. Of course, we should follow the development of the voluntary market. If we see it's an opportunity to enter, then enter. And I think we should continue working together. So we have this working group. It's open for other countries who have not joined yet. So any of you who wants to join the working group, please drop me an email and I will put you on the distribution list. And also we started to work with the person who is responsible for that in GFN, because that's a global issue. So I think it's good to share knowledge between GFN and FEBA as well. And my last comment, probably we'll need to allocate some financial resources. When we get to the point when we need an audit, or if we need a consulting company to do it in a proper way, I think we should spend money on it, because that's an important issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Balázs, for this overview on carbon credits, and especially for the last slide with the very concrete next steps. And now I would like to call on the stage Paula Capodistrias. So it's a different topic, so she will speak of urban food policies. So she will present a EU-funded Horizon 2020 project, which is focused on urban food policies. So what's in for food banks as regards urban food policies? Thank you, Paula.
Hello, hi. I have to take this down as usual. Yes, I'm Paula. I think most of you know me, but for those of you that don't, I'm a member of the board of directors. I've been working with food banking for around 5-6 years. I come from Norway, not originally, if you're wondering about my looks, but I can tell you more later if you're wondering. You see my Greek last name there. So, let's try to do this a bit quick, since lunchtime is approaching. Good, thank you. So today I'm going to talk to you about a project. I'm working as an urban food system senior officer at an organization called EAT, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about so that you understand a little bit of the context first. But I don't know about you, but when we don't have enough food for everybody and our food is making us sick, I would say that our food system is broken. The good news, because it is the last day and we want to leave on a high note, is that just working on fixing our food systems is enough for us to reach all of our climate targets. This means that us as food bankers working with food waste, surplus food redistribution and reducing food waste have a huge role in the future of our sustainable food systems. So to tell you a little bit about EAT, oh, I have it all there too. That's really cool. EAT is a global non-profit platform that works to catalyze a food system transformation through sound science, impatient disruption, and novel partnerships. We envision a fair and sustainable global food system for healthy people and the planet that leaves nobody behind. And we work to transform our global food system through science and disruption. We basically are in the middle of the journey between science and policy that will ultimately lead to the change that we need. And We, as you see there in the nice graph, we work in the intersection, as I said, of science, policy, and business. And we work with 5 urgent and radical transformations. The first one being the shift to healthier and more sustainable diets. We also want to realign food system priorities for people and planet, produce more of the right food from less resources, also take care of our lands and oceans, and radically reduce food losses and waste, which led us to the project I'm going to talk about soon. So how do we do this? Because there was a lot of really fancy words, and maybe you're still wondering, what do we do? Basically, we work with research. We have published a report called It Lancet Commission Report, where many scientists got together to come up with what would be the ideal diet to be within our planetary boundaries and also secure public health. We work a lot with advocacy and policy engagement, for example, through an initiative that we're working with now, which is the Food Economics Commission. We're all aware of the changes that we need to solve our food system, but we all know that it costs money, so we need to find out where that money is going to come from. That's very important. We also work through partnerships. We are working right now on something called TERF's Consortium, that is a group of a lot of really smart people and organizations such as WWF and CARE and so on, to try to take this to a larger scale. We work with awareness and education. As I mentioned, the planetary health diet. I encourage you to Google it later and learn more about it. And we also work with evidence-based initiatives. We love testing the ideas that come up from science and try to make them into a reality so that hopefully policymakers will hear about them and see that are the actions that we need. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this last project, Food Trails, that we're working with right now, and that touches upon the work of many food banks. This is a 4-year EU-funded Horizon 2020 project, and it is rooted in the Milan Urban Policy Pact. If you don't know what that is, I also encourage you to go ahead and Google it and find out more about it. This project is made of a consortia of 19 European partners, 11 of them being cities, 3 universities and 5 organizations. And the goal of this project is to enable cities to reimagine, develop and implement sustainable, healthy and inclusive food policies. So we heard a little bit about food policies many times through these last 3 days, and that is because it is very important. We do need the right frameworks to be able to transform the food system. And what is particular about this project, which other EU projects that you might have heard of also have in common, we actually are part of an even bigger family of many of these kind of projects, and they all have in common this concept of living labs. And living labs are a space for work, dialogue and collaboration to foster innovation, connect local key stakeholders and collect evidence to, as I said, support urban food policy development. And these living labs seek to co-design and co-implement food actions. So co-creation is the key word here. We work together with all of the stakeholders involved in the problematic or area that we're looking at, and we co-create solutions. So as you see, there's 11 cities. This affects around 7 million citizens. And at the moment, we're working with developing 25 food policy action canvas that we hope can inspire other cities. And I'm going to get back to that at the end of my presentation. But I wanted to give you some examples where these projects, I'm not going to talk about the 11 projects, even though I could do that because they are very exciting actions happening within them. But I chose a few cities just to show you the different impacts. So Tirana, where's Albania here? There. Very good living lab project, also very successful. It's also one of the things that they're working with. As you can see the little logo there, they're working with nutrition, climate and circularity. and specifically with connecting the food service sector for the redistribution of surplus food. And through most of the pilots, when we are trying to improve the redistribution of surplus food from the service sector, there are indeed many challenges, not least at policy level. There are still too many countries in Europe that have too much confusion around the regulations around saving food from the service sector, and that is something that we're addressing, among other parts, Tirana. Milan, where's Italy? Put your hands up. Italy? Oh, ciao, Marco. Milan also, well, it's been... Yeah, well, but you're just representing Milan. Okay, that's clear. Milan is doing also great work, it's been doing great work for some time now, monitoring food waste prevention and healthy diets in school canteens. One of the examples that I really liked from this pilot is that, you know, because it's working with all different stakeholders. So you have the experts, the researchers, but you also have the municipality and the teachers in the school and the people working in the canteens, in the kitchens, and there is a lot of food waste at the canteens. This is teenagers. Anyone that has teenagers at home knows how difficult they can be, how much their taste and their preferences change from one day to the other. There's a lot of food, unfortunately, that is wasted in school canteens. So the experts came and told Milan, oh, you should offer doggy bags so that the students can take this food home and, you know, and eat it later. Well, one conclusion that came out of it was that if the food was not appetizing when it was served in the cantina, it's not going to be more appetizing when it's taken back home. And I thought that was, like, you know, so simple, but at the same time it says so much. And that led to Milan started working much more on taste and enjoyment of the food. So why not making the food that the teenagers already like burgers and pizza and nuggets, mac and cheese, whatever, in a healthier way, in a more sustainable way. And that is actually helping. And my prime example today is Warsaw. Where is Poland? Put your hands up. Yes. Warsaw is also an incredible example here, and the cooperation with the food bank has been very strong and successful. They also started working with food waste prevention and reduction in small restaurants, but some things happen along the way that, thankfully, this is a very flexible, and as I said, co-creation is a big part of the project, so this meant that you could also go along with whatever the needs in that moment are. And what happened, they had these two goals initially, to work with helping restaurants reduce food waste, and they also wanted to optimize the donor and receiver distribution mechanisms in the context of the refugee crisis. They had two objectives in this pilot. I'm going to go a little bit more into Warsaw because it is such a good example of cooperation between research institutions and policy and food banks. They work with behavioral change on one side, as I said, working with the restaurants, but also with the logistics of food banks. And they also work in an institutional change through their living labs to have that space for the different stakeholders to come together and find solutions together. The second task that they had was to food use optimization in recipient organizations to basically improve the logistics together with a food bank in Warsaw. And for this, they use a methodology called REACT, which basically means reframing the issue, exploring the situation, analyzing the problem, creating solutions, and rigorous testing. That is the path that we're going to go through right now. So what happened is that right after the project was launched, the unfortunate war in Ukraine started. So that, seeing the changes, you know, the project people were ready to start, oh yeah, we're going to work in improving the logistics of the food banks. Oops. Suddenly, the need for food increased, the need for new activities to support refugees increased. So the Living Lab adapted quickly and modified the key topic in the food lab to focus specifically on this. So they had some field research, including interviews with different initiatives doing redistribution of surplus food. You can see there the phase, I skipped the phase one maybe, yeah. So reframing the issue was the first phase. And the second phase of this process is exploring the situation. So through this research, there were some interviews with initiatives providing food to refugees, and also 8 organizations receiving food from the food banks. This gave a really good overview from this deep analysis of what the situation were, the needs and resources were, essentially exploring what the situation was, framing it. And in this context, it was also important to understand the context. So there were several co-creation sessions about structuring food aid for refugees in the context of the war in Ukraine. And there were several conferences and workshops looking into this. Moving on to analyzing the problem, there were also workshops with the Warsaw Food Bank to analyze and explore the most efficient way to improve the logistics and the needs of the moment. And moving on, we went to creating solutions. So again, we got together and we tried to explore different solutions to be able to improve this surplus food redistribution and best support the local food bank with this task. Finally, in phase 4, they established the problem was an underutilization of the donated food, particularly bread, fruits and vegetables. And there were 2 big barriers. One was the storage space and also the high turnover of staff. So they worked with 2 interventions. One was to equip them to improve the storage capacity. And it was also a lot of work to nudge this, the food bank and the organizations towards better use of the donated food. The next step would be to test these solutions. I had lots of pictures with like all the storage facilities and solutions that they came up with, but please feel free to get in touch if you want to hear more about it. It's a little bit limited time today. But we are incorporating some big actors into the project, so that important stakeholders, so that we can start testing the new solutions for improving the logistics within Warsaw. And I wanted to end, I said in the beginning that the whole point of this project is to be able to inspire other cities to improve their food systems, especially through creating food policies, local municipal food policies. And I know that you don't represent cities, but many of you are in contact with your local municipalities. And as you see, I understand that these EU projects, and most of you food banks, I'm sure you get contacted about a new EU project, the application where they would really like to have the food bank as a partner, blah, blah, blah. And I understand it can be a lot, but I just wanted to show you a little bit of how it can actually be very valuable, especially if you make sure that it's going to address your particular needs. So what we have right now, it's a call for what we call cascade cities, which is basically that we want to invite several municipalities around Europe to come and visit these living labs. So if you work close to your local municipality, please forward this information to them. You can probably join them, you know, especially if it's, for example, the case in Warsaw, where they can come and see how they are working with logistics, or any of the other projects. There's a website with more information about each of the cities and what projects they're working in. Please, I encourage you to get in touch with your cities and tell them about this call. The deadline is next Friday, so it's just 1 week. But basically what this would involve is the visits to this country and workshops to be able to learn from these solutions. And the best part of it is that the travel cost would be covered by the project. So it's free, you know. Well, you know, you just need 1 or 2 days to get down there, wherever in Europe you choose to go and learn from other experiences. So that was about it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paola, for your presentation. And now we move from the European perspective to the global perspective. So I'm really happy to invite on the stage Lisa Moon, who is President and CEO at the Global Food Banking Network. He's also a member of the FEBA Board of Directors. And so she will share with us what's going on at the global level. What about the food banks at critical crossroads, but from a global perspective? Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Angela, and good afternoon. I too will also try to be as lively and entertaining as possible since we're getting close to the very end of this very important convention. So, let me just see. Hopefully everyone in the room is very familiar with the Global Food Banking Network because we've been very fortunate to collaborate with FEBA for many years now. But we really are a complement to FEBA, and the focus of our work is uniting and supporting and advancing food banking organizations, mainly in emerging and developing markets. And you can see here a bit about where our network stands today. In 2022, we were fortunate to support food banks in 49 countries, but based on the conversations we've been having with our board of directors, and the inquiries we've been receiving from hundreds of individuals and organizations around the world starting to do food redistribution for the purposes of hunger relief. We are now in a mode where we are taking on new partners, and today we are supporting food banking organizations in 53 countries. Our network has grown very significantly since 2019. We've added approximately 20 new locations. And this is primarily because the interest in the food banking model has been ticking upwards, primarily in Southeast Asia, India, and the major urban areas of sub-Saharan Africa. Our network has only 13 national networks, though, or 13 federations. So the vast majority of our network are really individual food banking locations, but many of them are based in urban areas that have very significant populations, places like Jakarta, Manila, certainly in Delhi. The average budget for individual food banking organizations in our network is approximately $400,000 US a year. So these organizations very much so are stretching every single part of their budget to do the work that they do. I'm only going to take about 15 minutes, and I want to talk mainly about some of the macroeconomic forces that are drastically affecting our members, how those are specifically impacting the operations of the food banks and how many of them are coping, and also then touch a bit on the policy pieces that Lindsay raised earlier this week. So we have talked many times throughout the past day about the enormous pressure that we are all feeling due to the compounding crisis of COVID, how that has affected the clients that food banks serve, as well as the challenges related to fundraising and product sourcing. I think that the one thing I wanted to add here, that something unique that we're seeing is that we have also seen inflation, which is leveling out, but there's also a significant number of members in our network that are dealing with natural disasters and social unrest. Even just last week, I was on a call where we were discussing with our Latin American network the anticipated impact of El Nino and how that was expected not just to increase demand for food bank service in Latin America, but also drastically impact the sources of food. The global numbers, of course, are things that you're all familiar with. The United Nations tells us that today, approximately 1 in 3 people face food insecurity, and about half of the people worldwide cannot afford a nutritious diet. It was very interesting because I think something that we have all been experiencing, but is especially pronounced in regions like sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America, is that we are in a place more or less where we're facing a very significant debt crisis. So as rich countries, including the United States, have raised their interest rates to try to suppress inflation, many of the countries where there are GFN members based essentially are getting crushed due to the increasing cost of managing their debt. There was a really interesting report on this release last week alongside the UN General Assembly that pointed out that this alone is going to drastically impact governments' abilities to provide social services to the people in their countries, and it's also affecting the ability for food banks to raise funds in this environment. So in our network alone, 36 of our members are based in countries that are being more or less tagged as at risk of crisis related to debt. I promise this presentation will get more positive as we go on. So a couple of stats specifically around our network. So more than 3/4 of the countries where GFN members are located last year experienced at least one climate-related natural disaster that was significant, that affected at least 20% of the population in that specific country. 35% of our members experienced civil unrest to the point that the food bank had to shut down for a period of time due to security reasons. And in terms of economics, I know some of the conversations we've been having are around what is the appropriate time to be purchasing food, and is this something that food banks need to consider doing more of? In the case of many of our members, purchase is just not an option. It would make it economically unviable for them to continue operations. So it is so important that food redistribution be successful. So what happened, I'm going to say last year for us, and I want to talk a little bit about just about how all of these dynamics affected the ability for our members to operate. So what you're seeing here, more or less, is the aggregation of our network. Now, we focus on emerging and developing markets, but we do have several high-income countries that we're fortunate to engage with formally. Food Banks Canada being one of them, Fair Share UK, of course, Food Bank Australia, and Korea Food Bank, and these are huge systems that are recovering a very significant amount of food. So what we saw, though, if we were to disaggregate this data by food banks located in Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and India, what it would tell us is that the food recovered in those regions actually increased last year. I want to talk a little bit about why. While food banks in higher income countries recovered less food and service contracted. So the product from manufacturers and retailers in these places has not recovered since COVID-19. So the main reason why we are seeing increases in emerging markets is because of a change in sourcing strategy. Our board discussed maybe 18 months ago that we were going to start focusing and supporting an expansion of support towards agricultural recovery and informal markets, thinking about ways to access additional fresh product that is often too expensive for many of the clients that food banks are working with to access. And this has been a really vital strategy for food banking organizations in developing markets. I have a couple of examples of this. We started working with Food Bank in Kenya when they were about a year old in 2019. They were serving at that time just about 1,000 tons of food and grocery products. In 2021, that grew to nearly it had exponential increase over that. Then there was a drought in the Horn of Africa last year, and that caused them to half their recovery. But the point is that the amount of product available primarily through export markets has been an incredible boon for that organization. We've seen similar success with Lagos Food Bank Initiative and Food for All Africa in Ghana, places where you traditionally would not think there would be an abundance of food. The second strategy, and of course we've talked a lot, I know Food Cloud is here, we talked a lot about kind of virtual models or ways to do food recovery and redistribution without direct investments in capital infrastructure. It is very expensive for many of our members to be doing things like leasing warehouses, leasing trucks, owning space, racking. This is tremendous capital investments that the economics in many places, first of all, they're just not available, the funds aren't there, or they don't make sense long term. And so what we're now tracking are how are our members kind of managing through this. Everyone here knows about the amazing work that Food Cloud is doing, and of course that's one solution that's being looked at. with some of our members. But there's another great solution that the network in Chile has put together, and it focuses on virtual redistribution, not just of retail product, but also manufacturing product and agriculture product. The solution right now is only available in Spanish, but they're going to be expanding this to 4 other countries in Latin America this year. And this, again, what our hope is that this is a less capital-intensive way to be expanding food redistribution without costly investment in traditional supply chains. So I can keep an eye on that and report back. Today, about 20% of the members in our network use some form of virtual food banking. Some are using tech platforms like our colleagues at the Red. Others, though, are just doing it using apps on spreadsheets and the like. So this is really an opportunity, I think, for innovation. About 5% right now of all the food recovered in the network is done through virtual means. And where you have organizations like the Red in Chile, like Food Forward South Africa that has developed their own solution, those food banks are recovering about 35% of what they're redistributing through virtual means. I want to talk for a minute about policy, and this is something that we had spoke about yesterday. For the past couple of years, we have worked with the Harvard Food Law and Policy Clinic to kind of understand more about how countries could be enabling greater food donation. So it is a tool to understand food loss and waste, but the purpose of the project is how do we create a policy environment that is going to incentivize donation of food for human consumption. We've conducted research in 24 countries. There will be 4 new analyses coming out in the next 8 months. And the atlas is covering a couple of different dimensions. First of all, they're looking at date labeling policy in countries and whether it distinguishes, of course, between quality and safety. They're also looking at policies around specifically food donation. You might be for retail or for, purchase consumption, you might have a certain policy, but it can be very advantageous for there also to be a policy approach related to donated product. Liability protection is something that has been analyzed, and not just do you have to have the policy in place, but what are the implementation guidelines that you need? I had a very interesting conversation with my colleague Daniela, who runs the food bank in Peru. They were successful at getting liability protection passed for food donation. The challenge was, though, in the writing of the actual guidelines, they were so unclear it couldn't be acted upon. And on top of that, there was no campaign by the government to inform any of the businesses in the country that this new protection exists. So you have a small organization essentially having to go product donor by product donor and try to convey the importance, the opportunity this creates. So policy alone isn't what changes something. It's about how the implementation guidelines are written, how that is shared, and that's something that we're really thinking about as we take this project forward, that we need to be incorporating more with our partners. Standards for food safety is also included in this analysis. And another major piece is, are there government programs that can invest in food redistribution infrastructure? So essentially, along those dimensions, they go through, and we'll send the website around, Angela, to the group or whatever, but you can select a country and see areas of strengths, areas where you could have improvements, and a lot of these things are no cost to the government, which is important in this environment. So we also did a look back this year in terms of what has changed. Are we actually seeing countries become more interested in food loss and waste and food redistribution? And what we found that just in the time since 2018, when we started doing this atlas, in 10 out of the 24 countries researched, governments have adopted at least one of the best-in-class policies for food recovery. And in those places, most have seen an increase in donation. So that's really the landscape in which we're working. I just want to thank everyone for your ongoing collaboration with the Global Food Banking Network. Jacques, to you, and Angela and Lindsay. It has been so enriching and a learning experience for us every time we do this. And I just want to say also, since it is September 29th, the International Day of Awareness for Food Loss and Waste, possibly the worst titled international day ever, but so important for us. We are going to be highlighting food bankers around the world on our socials. And so if you will be keeping an eye out for your campaigns as well, and we'll be happy to amplify and share. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. So we have, the good news is that we have 5 minutes. If you have a question or a comment for the previous speakers, while we are waiting, why do we have 5 minutes? There's a reason. We are organizing an online meeting with the Commission in Brussels, so we need 5 technical minutes to ensure that everything works. So if you have any questions or comments, no reactions. There's Ryan. Yeah, someone is coming, Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you, Balázs, for your research that you've done at your food bank on the CO2. It's very valuable, and for what you presented today. I really liked the idea of the data collection. I was wondering if there's been any thought given to synchronizing the data collection that FEBA already does, or validating that data to get that counted as CO2, or if we're just considering it on like a national level.
I think the goal should be to have a European level data as well, but in order to have that, we need data from national level, maybe not to 100%, but to at least to an extent where we can say that's a good enough sample to make an extrapolation for the rest. I think this will be part of the working group needs to analyze. Because I think at the moment the data collection is not synchronized with the work we've been doing. So we need to do some kind of a synchronization.
Yes, there's another question or a comment.
Also to Balázs on the carbon market. My question, my concern is the compromise between having the best system, the most acute system, the most precise system, and to keep some possible comparison. Because in this field, there are already so many methods. And some say, yeah, but this is calculated under this method, you cannot compare because this or that. Then is it not alternatively or cumulative? Also an interest to calculate through these existing methods in order to be comparable.
I think that's the reason why we need an external body saying that what you're doing is right, and that's what Food Cloud did as well. Because if someone says that's good enough, then from that point you just publish the numbers. I mean, all research has thousands of questions, and if you dig deep, you will see that the primary data, there are always compromises. I think the point is that it's not us who should say what's the best or good enough compromise, but it should be some external body, and this external body should be acceptable for those who use the data we provide them, and that's the key.
Okay, there's Marco. This is the last question, and then we will connect with Brussels.
Grazie all'intervento di Lisa, perché gli argomenti che che GFN sta affrontando li stiamo purtroppo ritrovando anche nelle nostre città europee.
Thank you, Lisa, for your intervention, because the problems that you were speaking about in your intervention is something that we are experiencing in our cities at European level.
Forse con dimensioni diverse, ma i temi sono identici, dai disastri naturali alla difficoltà di reperire cibo nelle grandi città soprattutto.
Maybe with different proportions, of course, but the big themes are the same, starting from the natural disaster, still the challenges of finding food in the big cities.
Così come i costi di gestione per le food bank aumentano sempre di più, e quindi l'idea anche di magazzini, di investimenti diventa sempre più un problema.
Such as the cost for the daily activities are increasing and increasing, for like the renting for the warehouses, or just covering the transportation and other daily activities.
E qui mi collego invece all'intervento di Paola sulle Urban Food Policy, che conosco bene perché a Milano partecipo fin dal 2015 a questo tipo di politiche.
And now is connecting to the Paola's intervention, because you spoke about this intervention, and he knows it pretty well, because since 2015 is part of this group in Milan.
Quindi la proposta che faccio è che, se è possibile, si formi anche un gruppo di lavoro che unisca FEBA e GFN su questo argomento delle Urban Food Policy, perché io intravedo che sarà il futuro non solo delle città ma anche delle banche alimentari.
So he's asking and suggesting to establish a common working group between GFN and FEBA for the urban food policies, to discussing about it, because he believes that it's the future and it's important to discuss these kind of topics.
Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you, Marco. Checking with the technical support if okay. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, perfect. We can see you and we can also hear you.
Super, I can see and hear you as well, that's good.
Okay, so, well, first of all, welcome and thank you for joining our annual convention 2023. So connected from Brussels, we have Claire Bourry, who is Deputy Director General at DG Health and Food Safety of the European Commission. So welcome and thank you for joining us. We prepare 3 questions that we would like to ask. So the first question is, we know that at the beginning of July, the European Commission released a proposal to amend the Waste Directive and to introduce legally binding food waste reduction targets to be achieved by member states by 2030. We also know that the European Commission is working on a legislative framework for sustainable food systems to accelerate and facilitate the transition to sustainable food systems. So what we would like to ask you, can you briefly explain and share with us what are the key points of these proposals, and in particular, how as food banks, as European food banks, how do you think we can contribute? What's the role that we can play with regards to these proposals?
So thank you very much, Angela, and good morning to everybody in the room. I wish I was there with you, rather than in what is a very grey day in Brussels this morning. But first of all, I'd like to thank you all for the work that you do, because it is invaluable. And I know you never give up. It's absolutely tireless. You're always striving to improve the situation as far as the food that gets produced actually reaches the people that need it, and especially those who are in greatest need. So first of all, thank you very much for that. So Angela, you've asked me two questions. The first is about the proposal that we made on targets. So I'll say a few words on that, and also about the framework for sustainable food systems. So I can say a few words on that as well. So obviously the background to our proposal on the targets is that all the EU and its member states are committed to the SDG goal 12.3, about halving per capita the global food waste by 2030, both at retail and consumer level, and also reducing losses along the food chain. But unfortunately, what we see is that in spite of that political commitment, which I think is a strong political commitment, and the fact that member states are starting to do things, we're not really seeing the results that we think are needed, and I don't think yet we're on a credible path to meet the targets. The waste levels are not declining as they should do, and the results of the first monitoring that we did showed that 58 million tonnes of food are generated, which is 16% of the greenhouse gas emissions. And the most recent data that have been published today, this week, therefore, show that there's hardly any change. So really the Commission is wanting to act as a catalyst to really galvanise the member states in terms of action, and we think that a way to do this is to set legally binding targets so that then everyone is moving in the same direction. What will that mean in practice? What we've proposed is that by 2030 member states should reduce food waste as compared to the baseline in 2020, because we only have data, unfortunately, for the last year or so, but by 10% in processing and manufacturing, and by 30% jointly in retail, restaurants, food services and households. So that's intended to aim at the hotspots that we have here in Europe in terms of the consumer and the retail end of things. Obviously, we want to try and better match food supply and demand, and that where we have surplus, we're best able to get it to those who are in need. And the food banks, you play a crucial role in that, of course, helping to recover surplus food that would otherwise go wasted, and making sure that it gets to people in need. And that really is very important as far as food security is concerned as well. And we know that's been an increasing preoccupation since the war broke out in Ukraine. So facilitating food donation is a key action that member states can do in terms of meeting those targets. So we want to work with you now to see how we can use this proposal, and how we can, as I say, galvanise everybody, and in practice see what we can still do to improve the situation. We know you've commented on the proposal, you've commented on what we can do, and we will do our very best to take that forward. We know that you need support, we know that you need financial support as well, so you can count on us to keep pushing for that. Now, to finish, just a couple of words on this framework for sustainable food systems. This is part of the Farm to Fork strategy. It's intended to really agree what we mean by food sustainability, because I think there's still questions out there in terms of what it means and how it should apply across the whole food chain. We would like to really look at all our policies, common agricultural policy, common fisheries policy, to name a couple, in the light of what we're trying to do on food systems, and realign and recalibrate. But this means having some definitions, it means having some principles, it means having objectives. But we really want this to be a game changer, let's say, in terms of how we approach sustainability across the food system. So that work goes on. We don't have a specific date yet for the proposal, but the work continues and is advancing well. And recently, over the summer, we've had a lot of input from the stakeholders, and from the member states, and we are processing and analysing that at the moment. Thank you. Back to you, Angela.
Yes, thank you very much. So you said that facilitating food donation is important and that the role of food banks is crucial. So what I would like to ask you is that, well, since its establishment in 2016, the EU platform on food losses and food waste has done a lot, especially on the topic of food donation. Well, I just remind the publication of the EU guidelines on food donation in 2017, so just one year after the establishment of the EU platform. So what I would like to ask you is, what are the future goals of the EU platform on food losses and food waste, and what activities are you planning, and again, how can we contribute?
So first of all, as you've said, Angela, the platform is really key in terms of the work that we do with the member states and all the stakeholders. And again, I'd like to thank you for being such an active participant in the platform. Without you, we wouldn't be where we are today in terms of progress. And I think there has been real progress. As you say, you mentioned the guidelines, but really that platform is delivering. So we've extended the mandate. It should have finished in 2022, but it'll now go forward to 2026. We have already had some very valuable inputs on this proposal on the targets. And we're now looking at how public-private partnerships, or the so-called, I think, voluntary agreements are established to be able to better identify best practices, to learn from each other's experience, and to help establish new agreements in countries where we don't yet have agreements. So I think we're looking really to expand the activities and make them a reality in all member states. Food donation, of course, is always a focus of what we're doing there. In terms of the collaboration with member states and other players. As I mentioned before, the rising food prices, the food security issues really have put you in the front line in that respect. So thanks for what we've done in the platform. I think we already have some fairly clear ideas about the projects and establishing best practice and exchanging best projects that we should focus on. But of course, we want to hear from you as well, what you think is important going forward in the platform. Because you are a very important part of that for us, and we want to make sure as well that what you think is important is also being delivered on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And then the last question that we have is, as we said and as we know, both the EU guidelines on food donation and also the recently proposal that was published at the beginning of July, amending the Waste Directive, so clearly stress the role of food donation as a way to prevent food waste. However, and this is something that we also discussed yesterday here in Madrid with some food bankers, what we see is that in many member states, in many countries, there are still many barriers and hurdles that make it difficult to donate surplus food. So we can see that there is, let's say, a positive climate on food donation at European level, but then there are still many challenges at national level. So do you have any suggestions or recommendations? How can we change this position?
Okay, so I think just to recall to everybody that we've now got a subgroup in the platform that looks at food donation, which you're co-chairing. And I think this is a good place for us to identify and analyse the barriers and see what we can do going forward. We've launched a questionnaire to the members of the whole platform, asking them to identify issues as they see them. What are the challenges, the opportunities, where are the problems? And we are looking now at those responses to see how we can take various issues forward. And thank you very much for your contributions. So we will be, and if of course there's anything else that's come up this week that you want to put in there, then by all means let us know. I think we've got some good examples in the member states where collaborations between food banks and business are now becoming quite well established. And they may be in places that we wouldn't necessarily have expected them either, maybe with insurance companies, logistic providers, maybe that's a bit more obvious, and music festivals. And I heard that even in Denmark, as I say, the food bank engaged with an insurance company who volunteered that their employees would dedicate a day's work of volunteering for the food bank. So I think there's some really good examples there. I think also we've tried in Brussels to, we've been to the Brussels Food Bank. We saw how amendments to the EU hygiene legislation allow for the safe freezing of meat can be implemented in practice. So I think we've got some good ideas out there now which show us how we can find a way through. But let's now, with the work that we're doing on the responses to questionnaires, any other input from your side, of course, let's see how we can take this forward. So if I may, can I say a few words by way of closing, or is there anything else, Angela, you wanted to ask before?
Yeah. No, please.
Okay, so I think if I've understood correctly, and I know that my colleagues, and I'm grateful to them, have been following what's been going on the last few days, you've been debating your organization's mission, your core values, and whether you should focus more on the social issue of material deprivation or the environmental issue of food waste. We, in preparation for the work that we did, the proposal that we did on the targets, we had a European Citizens Panel that met 3 times over weekends. I'm grateful both to the colleagues and to all the citizens who did that. And what we saw from that is that the citizens associate food waste reduction with a fair, equitable food supply chain that ensures solidarity. They even themselves had ideas about how to facilitate food donation. And hopefully, as I said before, through this proposal that we made about setting targets, we can give further impetus and support for your work across the EU. It's not just about the targets, it's about what we do to support and implement those targets. So we'll be very happy to hear further from what you've discussed in the conference and our continued cooperation. Thank you really again for being such a valuable, reliable, and important partner for us in terms of trying to make sure that we save more food and we make it available to those who need it most. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes. So our best greetings from Madrid, and let's continue the collaboration in Brussels and in all the different countries, European countries. Thank you. And now we are at the end of this annual convention 2023. So I'm really pleased to give the floor to our president, and please a big, big, big round of applause to thank the president, Jacques van der Streek.
What a convention. It was a fantastic moment of exchange of practices, opinion, certainties, uncertainties, but most of all, it was the opportunity to make new friends. And I think this is somewhat Europe. Now it is traditional at the end of a convention to thank people who have been instrumental in making this a success. And I would like obviously to thank the European Union and General Mills, who by their contribution make this type of event possible. I would like to ask Pedro Castaños, and you know, communication is also applauding, so you can applaud him. And all his friends from FEBA, thank you very much for organizing or participating in the organization of this convention, which will remain in, I'm sure, in many memories for a long time. You know, we started with the reception with the Queen, and yesterday evening was beyond expectations. I would like also to thank my friends of the FEBA team, and I would also like them to raise when I call their name, and please give them a solid round of applause, because they have worked very hard, left no stone unturned to make this a success. So Lindsay Boswell, who has animated Angela Frigo, Valentina Darigo, Tatiana Taravije, our new communication officer, Anna Friedrichs, Sofia Vara, Anne Decker, new fundraising officer, thank you, and Lily Renner, who is not here but has worked a lot also in the preparation of this event. I would like also to thank all our speakers, the facilitators, and a particular word of appreciation to Tom Arnold, who assured the keynote speech yesterday. My colleagues and friends from the board of directors, you have been put to work this convention. This is a new thing, and I hope you enjoyed it, but anyway, thank you a lot. I would like also to thank the Banco de Alimentos de Madrid for the visit that was allowed, and most specifically for the presentation that was made. That was a perfect introduction to the debates that we had, I think, in our convention. Thank you very much. I also like to point out, as it is now a tradition, that our collaboration with GFN is an integral part of our convention, as much as the FEBA collaboration with GFN is an integral part of the FBLI. And I think this type of exchange is giving another added dimension to what we're trying to do together. There is one man who worked hard. He even needed to take a second group photograph. Thank you very much, photographer. The technical support there. Thank you for what you have done. And finally, all of you for coming here, for participating. Thank you very much. And I'll see you next year from the 18th to the 20th of September in Prague. Have a safe trip back and enjoy your lunch if you have the time. I won't have it. I need to catch the plane. But thank you again. Bye-bye.